Welcome to day one of Merry Missmas, 10 days of Christmas card making using 10 different mediums. Today's medium is going to be watercolor. We're going to start this series off with a bang. Make sure you join me for tomorrow's. Tomorrow's medium is going to be a paper doily that we're going to make into a tree. So make sure you look for day 2 tomorrow. But today, let's focus on our medium, which I just said is watercolor. This is the card that we're going to be creating today, which is a beautiful evening sky with some beautiful snowflakes and Christmas ornaments dangling. I really love how this one turned out, and I can't wait to share with you how easy it is to make this using watercolors. This card is completely handmade. So the first thing I want to show you guys, I'm just going to sneak it in here off to the corner, is I'm using some mixed media paper back here for the background. And this paper measures a 7 by 9. See, I tore it out of a mixed media pad. That is the white portion because we're going to be doing some inking on it. And we're going to fold this in half. So this is the basis of our card. It's a little bit, the reason why I picked this is because it's thicker than cardstock. It has poundage, if you will. So I like that. It'll hold up to anything you're going to do with it. And it's mixed media paper, so it's meant to be different things done to it. But for the actual watercoloring part of this, I have a watercolor pad. This is the Artist Loft. This, I believe, I got from Michael's for like $3. It's not because it's only 140 pounds. This is like, I'm talking about the grade. It's not the thickest grade. It's not the best water. I mean, I do have another paper pad that's like, it's 400 series, I believe, and it's much better watercolor paper. But for this, but what we're doing today, you don't need the best of the best watercolor paper. But I do recommend having watercolor paper. Otherwise, when we're doing the different colors, believe it or not, there's like many colors to this. They will bleed together. You're going to see why, and it'll just turn brown. You don't want that. So you do want to use watercolor paper. And like I said, you don't have to have the best. I think I got this for like $3 over at Michael's. So we're going to get ourselves a sheet of watercolor paper, and we're going to cut it in half because we're doing 2 different styles of watercolor. And again, you don't want them to bleed together. Let me just get this and move it off to the side. So what I'm literally going to do is fold this in half so that I have 2 separate sheets of watercolor for the purposes that I need them for. And believe me guys, this doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to use scissors to cut them in half. You also can get watercolor from Michael's. Like I said, guys, this doesn't have to be perfect. I was actually gifted a year or so. It's been a little over, I think it's 2 years. I was actually gifted some James Davenport watercolors, and they are my absolute favorite watercolors, but you can get watercolor anywhere. You can even get watercolor pencils. That it all works. Just make sure you have watercolor paper, or like I said, it will bleed. So the only thing about making this particular card is that you need to give it the time it needs to dry. So there'll be pauses because you are using wet and water. You will definitely need to let this dry. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to make our night sky, which we're going to be using blues for. Blues and whites, which I believe, if I remember correctly, is in my gold pack. Yes, I'm going to be using blueberry and unicorn for this. So just depending on what kind of medium you're using, what kind of watercolor you're using. If you're making a night sky, you just want to use blues, different shades of blues with some whites, because the white specks will represent like stars. So make sure you select the right side of your watercolor paper. And the very first thing I do is I get the paper wet. You're just going to get the paper wet. It doesn't have to be sopping, but you do need to get your paper wet. We're going to make the sky first, and then we will set it aside, and then I will show you how we're going to make the bulbs. This is the most tedious part of the card, but I think the funnest part because you get to play with watercolors. And then we're going to get our blueberry on here, and we're just going to begin to swirl.
Love yourself. A merry little Christmas night. And have yourself a merry little Christmas.
To do is while my paper is still wet, I'm going to begin to layer just a little bit. And I do want to put a little bit of this purple in here, which I'm going to be using some of this Mystic and some of this Butterfly, just to give not a whole lot. I want my basis to be this blue, but just to give it a little bit of a pop of a color. Go back to our original color, which was blueberry. Okay, we're going to grab a smaller brush, one that has more of a finer tip to it. We're going to get quite a bit of the water off of it. All right, you're going to put it back into your blueberry, you're going to hold it over, and you're going to smack the tip, and then that's how you will get like your different colors through. Okay, you guys see what I'm saying? And then there is your specks of stars. And this technique we're going to be using quite a bit. So if you want to have paper underneath, so where I'm working, it doesn't matter. I just wipe it off. But we're using our original color, which is the blueberry, and we're just smacking colors. We're just smacking the brush, and it'll begin to bleed and kind of fade into the background because our paper still is very, very wet. That's why I said you want to do this on a wet surface. Because if you would do this after it's dry, the color, it's not going to mix very well. It's going to be very pop. But that's why we're going to wait till it dries to do the white, because we want the white to stand against it. Okay, I think just a little bit more, and we should be able to call this. This is so much fun, guys. I know my hand is in the way, but there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this aside to dry, and then we're going to work on our next medium. But this is the beginning of our night sky. Okay, so here is our second piece, and this is where we're going to be making our bulbs. And for this one, we're going to be using both of these packs as well, because over on this side, I have the apple, which is the red. And then over on this side, we're going to be using this Jiminy green. Over here, you guys can see. Jiminy green. So we're going to be kind of doing the exact same thing. But I want to get my brushes very clean of the blue, because I don't want any funny colors. I don't want it to bleed. That's the only thing about watercolor. When watercolor does bleed, it turns brown. It turns everything muddy. Very muddy, very brown. Let me bring you guys in a little closer. There we go. I feel like this cup is casting an awful shadow. There we go. Okay. So just make sure you clean your brush very, very well so that you don't get muddy colors. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to put water down first on our watercolor paper, and I think, am I using the wrong side? No, I got the right side. You can feel in the paper which side is the right side. Okay, we're just going to get a nice little wet basis down. Exact same principle, but this time we're not putting any base color down. No base color. So now that we have our paper good and wet, we're going to go back to that finer tipped brush. Okay, and we're going to grab some of the darker color first, which is the red, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're just going to begin to spatter the paint. Okay. We're not putting any bases down because we're not doing a sky. Okay. Now, as this goes down, you're going to get a couple layers here because as it begins to bleed, it's going to fade and get like a little bit of a pink color, which is okay. Don't fret. It's meant to bleed a little bit. It's meant to move. The water moves it. You're just going to keep adding layers. This is so much fun. I just hate my big hand being in the way, but okay. We're just going to do a little bit more of the red here in different places. Okay. Now you see how the red is kind of moving. That's okay. Don't worry. Don't fret. Flatten out our paper here. Okay. I think you guys can see it's kind of moving. All right, so very quickly we're going to rinse our red brush. Make sure you get all that red out. Again, we don't want to muddle our colors. Okay, dry it off, and then we're going to go in with our green. Let me move this out. Move the green in. We're going to go in with our green, get it nice and wet, and we're going to begin to add that layer. And we're just going to keep adding these layers, because the first layer is going to bleed a little into the water that we based the paper with. And then once that begins to dry, then the splatters are going to stand up. They're going to be very much more prominent. But we want that look. At least that's what I'm going for. Okay. It's looking really cute. I love it. A few minutes there. And then we're going to go back in with a little bit more red. And then we'll finish up with a little bit more green, because now the paper, like this part of the paper you can see is completely dry. This part of the paper is still a little wet, but the bleeding will stop. So now the speckles, if you will, are holding up. So we want to define a little bit of the red, because the red is what bled. You always put your darker color first doing this kind of medium. In different kind of mediums, you usually put your light colors down first. But for this, you want your darker colors because you want the green to stand on top of the red. But now that it's drying, we're going to add a little bit more red. But I wanted to show you right here. See where these two colors kind of came together, because the paper is very wet here. See how it got really dark? And little teeny spots like that, I don't mind. But if you were to do this all, that's how it would mud. It muddles your colors. So I'm talking, but I know for me, when I was starting to do watercolor, I wanted people to explain things to me a little bit better, because I'm new. This is all new to me. This is a whole new medium. And new mediums can be scary because you want it to look like what you see. So I totally get that. And listen, guys, we don't have to cover the whole paper on this either, because you're just cutting 3 ornaments out of this. Okay, guys. So what I'm going to do is we're going to let this dry, and then I'll be back how to do the rest. Okay, guys, they are now dry. I had time to put a load of laundry in and clean my whole kitchen. So if you hear the washer in the background, it's because I started laundry. That's great. You craft and get some housework done at the same time. So, like I said, guys, we're going to add some white specks. Now, you can do the exact same thing. In that Jane Davenport, there was white. It was called Unicorn, and I did mention that. You can go ahead after it dries, you know, do the same thing where you hit the brush and splatter white. I also have a jelly roll that's white, and I find that this kind of works better because I can kind of place it where I want. And I just go in and I make little white dots. They just random, they don't have to have a whole bunch, but just to bring in some white on the darker spots. And it may not be super noticeable on camera as I'm doing this, but it makes a world of difference when you put the card together. And I'll show you here in a minute what I mean. Let me just, so I don't lose my tracking of where I did this. I want some bigger ones and then some smaller ones. And the jelly rolls are awesome. Okay. So if I bring it up, I think you guys can see the flecks of white all through it. Like I said, sometimes it's hard to see on camera. So this is our card. We're going to fold it in half. I already talked about this in the beginning of the video about this is my mixed media paper. It's 7 by 10. We're going to fold this in half. Just like this. Make sure the edges line up. You don't want a crooked card. Sometimes this is really hard to do on camera because I have a camera sitting right in front of me, so sometimes it's really hard to see. And that light is a little bright. But like I said, without the light, you guys would not be able to see nothing. Okay, so here is our card. And we're going to want, this is our night sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my paper here and I'm going to mark where I want this cut. So this is how I do it, guys. This is how I measure out everything. So if I take this down about, I would say that's 1 inch. Yeah. About 1 inch right here. So take this down about 1 inch to cut. And then this is the full length of the card. And again, I'm going to take it about 1 inch. I just eyeball this stuff, guys. If that makes you uncomfortable and like you would much rather like measure, feel free to do that. To me, I don't need to do those kinds of things. Let me move my coffee here so I don't spill it. I don't need to do those kinds of things. I'm a kind of crafter that just kind of wings it, but I know that can make other people very uncomfortable. So whatever makes you comfortable. So here is our card base, and if I put this on here, look, see, to me, that's perfect. I didn't measure anything, I just eyeballed. It looked like 1 inch and 1 inch, and it works perfect. So that is our basis night sky. So I'm going to set that off to the side because now we're going to work on how we get our ornaments, which is these parts. So what I have here is I have these little die cuts that, again, were gifted to me. I do not have a, let me pull you guys in just a little bit. Okay. I do not have a Cricut or a die cutting machine. I really want one. Maybe Santa will bring me one for Christmas. I don't know. They can be a little expensive, but I really want one. But I rely on things that people gift me. If they gift me these things, I use them. So I was just recently gifted these little die cuts, if you will. I'm sure these were cut out of a machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay them on top of our watercolor, and I'm going to get a pencil and I'm going to trace them out and then fussy cut them. I have them all cut out. Look how cute they turned out. Love them. So the next step I want to do is I'm going to ink them up because I want them to be prominent. This is just my opinion, and this is something that I love to do. When you distress the edges of things, I think it pops them, it pulls them up off the paper, especially when you're doing some layering, and there is layering in here, so. Now to me, doesn't the distressing, the little bit of black ink really pop it? And then when I add these, that'll be another layer. And I believe that the black just pops the layer. The next thing to do is we're going to get our sentiment ready, which our card says, thinking of you at Christmas. And I just want to show you, here it is. I don't know where this came from. Again, this was gifted to me. I'm using things that were gifted to me. And this is just an adorable Christmas like sayings and sentiments and things. So I don't know where this came from because this is how it was gifted to me. So there was no package, so I don't know if it's Paper Studio or anything like that. But I'm going to be using the thinking of you at Christmas. Just to save time, I'm sure you guys have seen people, you know, stamp. I already stamped the sentiment. So what I'm going to do is just, again, I'm going to take my little fussy cut scissors and I'm going to fussy cut this out very simply. I'm going to very lightly, not too much, ink the corners of this, which I'm not even going to re-dab. Oh, I don't like that one little sharp corner because it is black ink. And if you do too much, it definitely will it'll muddle your words. It'll look awful. So just a little bit. And I'm not re-dabbing my dabber. I'm just using the ink that's already on here because I don't want it too dark. I literally just want to get the corners so that the card's cohesive. There. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to build the card before we glue it down because there's elements to this. So I want my thinking of Christmas right here. And how we're going to be using this as a glue down, if you will, is I'm going to be using double-sided tape. If you don't have double-sided tape, you can go ahead and just, you know, glue it down with whatever kind of glue. You could use a glue stick. You can use the tacky glue. Whatever kind of glue you have. I personally prefer to do everything with the double-sided tape because I like to pop it. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't even know if that's the right word. Lift it, if you will. I think it adds like a 3D effect to it. And again, it's layering. The exact same thing. We're going to be using the double-sided tape to adhere these. And again, it's just to pop them. It's just to bring it up in layers. Now we have them laid. Alrighty. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a marker or whatever you have on hand. I'm going to be using my Micron pens and we're going to be drawing the string that goes on. And then guys, like, this is so simple. This is how I do it. I take my scrap. I told you guys, like, I don't use professional tools. I don't stress. I don't do any of that stuff. I just take a scrap piece of paper to make sure my line is straight. I put about right where I want mine to start. I line the paper up right next to it, make sure it's straight. And I just bring my line up. That's how I do it, guys. Really and truly. I don't use any professional tools. I don't do anything like that. I just use whatever I have on hand. And then to bring another layer in that I think is really, really cute, is I put a little teeny dot, a bunny ear, little squiggle, and you have a bow. That is literally how I do that. That's how I did that. Now you can leave the card like this. You do not have to add the twine, but I believe that the twine adds another layer of fun. So we're going to add the twine. before we adhere this piece onto our actual card. So I'm just using baker's twine that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. And again, we're going to use our scraps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of my tacky glue down over here in the corner. If I can get it to go. Come on. You can do this. Okay. Just put a little piece down. A little dab, rather. I'm going to put a piece of twine right in it. And then I'm going to grab one of my little scrap pieces of paper, rip it off, and stick it right over the twine. And then that will be how my twine will actually adhere to the back of my card and not pull off while I'm trying to wrap my card. You're just going to hold it there for a few seconds just to make sure that it sticks really, really well. Okay, now that isn't going to go anywhere while I wrap my card. And we're going to use the exact same method. That's how we're going to adhere this little piece. And then this will be reinforced, guys, when we add the double-sided tape, because you're going to put a piece of double-sided tape right over on each corner. So it'll even be more reinforced. This is just a little trick to put your twine down and it stay while you're trying to wrap your card and finish up whatever it is that you're doing before you actually like adhere it to your whatever you're making. It's just a little tip that I've learned to do. Now we have our twine on. So now we are ready to take this and get this on to our base card, and then we'll begin to build on top of that as well. So this part is really, really boring. I'm not going to film this whole thing, but we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to take our foam tape. We're going to cut little squares of our foam tape, and then we're going to put them in each corner of our card. So I'm going to do that off camera because this is pretty boring. Okay, so I have the 4 corners. We're going to get it placed down on our base card. Again, I don't do any kind of measuring or anything like that. I just eyeball it. It looks good. I place it. As simple as that. Again, these are homemade cards. They do not have to be perfect. Just push it over. Just going to bend this. Because we used water, the paper gets a little stiff. So I'm just making sure it goes on nice and straight here. There we go. Okay, so we have our little base done. Now we're going to be adding all of the things that make it fun. So what I'm going to show you before I zoom you back in, these are the little sequences that I'll be using where the little holes on the ornaments will be going. I have these little tiny snowflakes, which was ornament fill from the Dollar Tree. I have these, which are considered shaker bits. I think I got these from Hobby Lobby. And then these are also ornament fill from Dollar Tree. And this is how I'm going to be putting the little holly on the bulbs. And then guys, you can buy table scatter, you can buy shaker bits, all this stuff you can find easily. And this time of the year, Dollar Tree has a lot of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put down 3 little dots of glue. I'm using my tacky glue. You can use hot glue, but because the spaces are so small, I feel like if you used hot glue, it's going to show. You know how like when hot glue, oh, I promised I would bring you guys down. Here, hold on. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit, guys, so you guys can see more of detail of what I'm doing. There we go. You know how hot glue, when it dries, you can still see it if you put too much down? Clear tacky glue does not do that. Once it's dry, you can't see it. So that's kind of why I prefer the tacky glue. It's just my personal preference. And then what I'm going to do while I have the tacky glue out and turned like this, I'm just going to put little dabs here and there of different places. I think some snowflakes would look great. Now I have all of our little snowflakes glued down and placed where I want them. I'm just going to push this one back a little bit so you can kind of see them. The next step is we're going to bring some sparkle to the ornaments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some stickle down first because stickle is almost like a glue. Then I'm going to put some of our clear gel on top, our tacky glue on top of that, and then I'll place the holly. So all I do is this is just to add a little sparkle. I put a little dab on each ornament like so, and this is of stickles. You're probably going to see this used a lot the next 10 days because I love it. And I just take a paintbrush and I just spread it on. All done. Okay guys, there is the card we made together. Here's the card I made as my demo. Of course, they're not going to look identical because it's watercolor, but I think you guys understand. Like, look how cute. Isn't they adorable? I think they turned out super, 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 super cute. This is our first card out of our Merry Missmas of 10 days of card making. I hope you join me for the other 9 days. Tomorrow, like I said at the beginning of the video, our medium is going to be a paper doily. You don't want to miss it. That card is absolutely adorable. This was the first one, which was watercolor. So we're going to go straight from like watercolor, doilies, washi, mixed media, layering. We're going to have lots of fun making 10 homemade cards to give to your family and friends. So make sure you join me the rest of the days. And also, my Instagram is linked down below because I have a demo and the card that I'm making together with you. I'm going to be giving one of the cards away. Probably my demo card I'll be giving away, over on my Instagram. So make sure you head over to my Instagram. It's linked down below to enter in to win the card that I made today and throughout the rest of our 10 days here. And I have my Facebook group is linked down below, my Patreon. Please just shop down into the Dropbox and check out all of my links. I have fun things going on everywhere. I have videos on Patreon that you can only see there that are tutorials. I have a Facebook group that you can go and share what you make. And like, for instance, if you see these cards and you really, really love it and you want to make one, you can go ahead and make one and then post it to my Facebook group, and then we'll all be able to see your take on this type of card, which will be so much fun. So if you haven't joined my Facebook group, please do so. And if you recreate any of this, make sure you post it to my Facebook group so that we can see it and give you all the thumbs up and likes. So that's it for me today, guys. As always, take care of you, do what you love, have a merry, merry Missmas, and I'll be talking to you in the next video. Bye, guys.